Hey,
We're live.
Oh, hey. Hello.
Hello.
What's up, everyone?
Welcome to your Everyday Rich podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Jen.
I'm Jason Cow. AOAO. Welcome, welcome. Like Jen said, thank you for listening to Your Everyday Rich and joining us for this wonderful episode here, where we are actually going to touch on a topic that we went through a lot in, I think, our 20s, even our 30s. And I think a lot of people go through this every day in their...
Every 10 years.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, people every day are going through this, but you might go through this every 5 years, every 10 years.
Yeah.
Depending on how long you intend on owning a car.
Yep.
Which is, how much car can you actually afford? And how do we figure out how much we can afford?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the interesting thing is, like, when I think back with growing up, like you were mentioning high school, right? Your parents driving a old beat up Camry.
And that was handed down. That was actually, my Aunt Candy's.
Oh, wow. That's
my aunt, my mom's sister's car.
Yeah, no, I know how old it is. One of my friends, Joe, like, he had the exact same car, so I know exactly what it was. Like, it's a funny story. Like, we went clubbing once in university.
And you drove the Panda?
He drove his Panda, and this guy, like, Joe, was eating a bowl of rice.
Oh my God.
And he put it on the roof when we got out at the school, and he forgot about it. And we drove off to the club, and
it flew off?
And it flew off.
Oh my God, that's so, like... White, is it white panda?
Yeah, it's
a white panda with the bowl of rice on the top of that.
Bowl of white rice.
Oh God.
With a bunch of Chinese kids in it.
But anyways, we're not here to talk about white rice. We're here to talk about how much car can you afford? Yeah,
like that's the whole thing, right? When you look back, the times where, let's say, you had to go through this whole process of buying a car. Mm-hmm. Like, what factors did you take into account? And maybe you never actually purchased a car yet, or maybe you're in process of looking for another car, right? Because what you're driving is coming around to RIP. So
yeah,
what would you do?
Well, I think it depends on what situation you're in, right? Like, for example, when I bought my first car, I was living at home.
Yep.
I was not married, didn't have kids. So I really didn't have any expenses, really. Bless my parents, I never had to pay rent.
Yeah, same.
Okay. I didn't pay for food other than, if I went out with my friends or with you, then, I'd pay for my own food. But for the most part, living at home was free. So I had no expenses other than my credit card.
So did that mean you had a bigger budget for your car?
Yeah, It's true. I had more money, more disposable income, right? To, put towards a car.
Yeah, I would say I was in a similar position. Not necessarily more disposable income, but I mean, your discretionary income
is a higher percentage.
Higher percentage can be applied to your car, which in retrospect, I think if anyone is looking at from an investment standpoint, it's not the greatest thing to do.
No.
And just like you were mentioning, to go back, what you're saying is it really depends on where you are in your journey here, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're early on and maybe you are making a great income, who's to say that you don't want to spend a few more bucks on your car? I mean, I'm not here to judge, but with all this time passed and now seeing what compound interest and obviously all these things can do for you.
Yeah.
Bro, like, the less money you spend on a car, a depreciating asset, the more you can use towards investing.
Yeah. I could probably say if I bought like a cheaper car, like if I didn't buy the Lexus, I probably could have saved myself $200 a month.
Oh, yeah.
Easy. And, rolled around in a less expensive car.
Yeah. And like, to each their own, right? So it's just, those are the things that we personally went through.
Yep.
Did it hurt us in the long run?
No,
not really.
No.
right?
If it was a Lamborghini, it probably would have hurt me in the long run. But
well,
do you know what I mean?
Right?
Like it's not like that significant of an amount.
But
at that time.
Yeah. But like, this is what I'm saying is that depending on where you are, right? So if you're a 6-figure plus income earner, maybe it doesn't impact you as much. If you're, making 40, 50, 60 grand, chances are like, it doesn't make sense if you're going to go buy a $50,000 car on a $50,000 salary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are kind of the things we'll touch on near the end of this episode. So stay all the way to the end about like the psychology of these things and how you can look at something differently if you are earlier on buying a car or you intend on upgrading a car. Okay, how do we do this? Like we have certain metrics when we looked at it. A lot of it was obviously based on income and affordability. So what we were comfortable with putting up front.
Yeah.
But before you start that, you got to figure out, okay, well, what's your overall budget? And we worked backwards. So number one is doing, obviously, like we always preach budgeting.
Yeah.
Budget what your current expenses are. So if you're living at home with mom and dad, your expenses are pretty much zero other than food, drink, gas.
Take advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I can say.
But if you got a mortgage and you got kids to pay for or whatever it is,
dependents,
then you got to look at those things holistically, right? So look at and calculate all the things that you have as an expense that are key expenses. So housing, food,
necessities,
things like your savings as well, because I count that as a key life necessity. Like you should be putting money towards savings before
you budget a car.
Exactly. So, and then it gives you an idea. Okay, well, I can work with
this range,
right? That's what I'm left over with. So, I mean, a general rule of thumb could be 20 to 30% of your gross annual salary. So you can do the math, right? And what that means is let's take easy math, right? So if I'm making 100 G's, 30% of my salary, of my gross income, which is $30,000
a year,
divide by just 30K. That's how much car I should be looking for, like a $30,000 car. Okay. In that range. But we all know that we don't just look for, okay, well, how much does the car cost? Because it gets broken down into, well, monthly payments and all this stuff. And how much money are we willing to put down as a deposit if we are? So another common guideline is going smaller, right? Because 30% might be too aggressive, especially if you are lower income. You shouldn't maybe be putting so much money towards your vehicle because 30% is a lot.
Yeah.
Look at 20%, right? So 15 to 20%. Add 2% for insurance. So just do some math there. I mean, it all comes down to math, but it is all dependent on where, like, obviously, your income.
Yeah. I personally think, I think percentages can be a starting point rule of thumb, but I think in the day it comes down to, what you're actually spending monthly expenses on various different items, right? And kind of doing that calculation from what you get paid every month and then minus all the things you have to pay for and see what you have left for a car. And it may not be, maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 10%. I have no idea, right? It just depends on what your situation is.
Yeah. So then like we can move to another just guideline, I guess, in terms of like, well, I like to look at this guideline where it's called the 24-10 rule. Okay. So 20-4-10. Basically what that means is broken down into 20% down payment. And the reason why we talk about 20% down payment, similar to, let's say, real estate, not because of mortgage rules, but more about creating an affordable monthly payment plan. So by putting 20% down, it obviously allows you have more equity into the car, so to say. But it creates manageable payments.
Yeah, decreases your monthly payment.
That's right. So, and if you choose to completely avoid financing, then obviously that changes, right? But we are going to assume that you're going to finance this if the interest rate makes sense.
Yep.
And we also assume that a lot of people don't want to spend all cash on their cars.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about financing is, even for us, I got lucky with my first car. I did get financing, but financing came from my parents at 0%. Now, not everyone gets that opportunity, but on our current car right now that we've paid off, we financed it, but when we bought it, interest rates were super low.
The car interest rate was like below 2.
Well, the thing is, we actually didn't even use the car financing, if you remember. Like the interest rate that the bank was offering on our HELOC was actually lower than the value that the dealership was offering us. Yeah. So what we eventually did was we paid the dealership cash in full, but we took that money from our HELOC, which was given to us at like less than 2%.
Yeah, and
at that time,
and we converted it into a fixed loan.
Yeah,
which locked in the rate.
Yeah,
and it was so low.
It was a 2% financing deal. That's what I mean, right? So when it comes to financing, don't just fall for what the car dealership offer you. Like look around. Like there could be a way to find cheaper money for you if you're going to finance your car. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Right? The car dealership is not the end all by all, right? Look at your options and what you're available.
Yeah, and to piggyback off your thought there is by coming back to the dealer and saying we would pay cash, it actually gave us a lot of negotiation.
Yeah.
Like negotiating power because like they're like, cash. Oh, wow, you're going to buy cash? Of course, let's make a deal here. Right?
Give me a cash deal.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, here's one price and here's another price. So, just be creative. Think about where you can pull capital from.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get a 0% loan from your parents. I don't know. Test the water.
That's another source of cash.
Yeah, the bank of mom and dad.
Bank of mom and dad.
Oh, by the way, if you are looking for some financing, we do have a favorable rate. I can tell you it's not 0%, but
yeah, just saying.
So continuing on this 24-10 rule. Okay, the 4 stands for 4 years in terms of the loan term, and why we like to use 4 is typically 4 is a number in the range where it allows you, along with the 20% down, it allows you to create manageable payments while being able to pay off the car before the car depreciates more than your remaining loan. Okay, so essentially you want to be able to pay off the car before the car depreciates faster than your loan value. Yeah. So I don't want to be owing more
than what your car's worth.
So like you can go to the dealerships and you'll hear these like 72 months, 96 month financing terms. Like, guys, let me tell you right now, that is the easiest money the dealerships will ever make, and that's a sucker deal because they're just essentially creating a revolving door of interest for you to pay. You essentially are paying so much more interest that you're actually almost add how much value you're adding, so much more interest.
You paid more than what the car's worth already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if what's the general rule here, and we all know this, is that when you drive off the lot the first year, like you've already lost a significant portion, like 30% of the value of the car.
Is it that high?
Well, it can be, depends on what car.
Wow, it's crazy.
Right, but let's give you an example. So let's say I bought a car for $30,000, and I got a I don't know, $25,000 loan, right? If my first year I paid off $5,000, but the car depreciates $5,000, like that's the thing. You want to make sure it doesn't depreciate faster than your loan value. Okay,
makes sense to me.
And here's the thing too, like part of the reason why these longer term loans are attractive is, let's be real, it makes the payment easier to pay.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Hey,
It's easier to swallow, right?
Yeah.
Like,
hey, you know what? Like, I know I can afford $100 a month. Well, I'll drag it out 96 months.
versus $400.
That gets me my Beamer, Benz, or Bentley.
Yep. Yep.
Right? So, but that creates a whole shitload more problems. And really, that's just society pressures, in my opinion. Right? Because now you want to have this status symbol of saying, oh, you know what? I actually can drive that car. I can have that nice car. But when you look at the math, you're just putting yourself in a hole.
Yeah.
Long term. And the last thing is 10%, 10, which is 10% rule. So the idea is you want to keep your monthly payments within 10% of your monthly income. So your monthly payments of the car should be roughly 10% of your annual income. Does that make sense?
Of your monthly or your annual income?
Monthly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So the easy way to do that is divided by 120, and the math works out, and we'll explain it, is let's call it 100,000. You divide it by 10, which is the 10% rule, right? And you divide it by 12, which is 12 months.
Yep.
And that gives you your monthly payments. So Jen, can you pull up your calculator? So let's just give an example here, right? So if I make 70 grand, okay, so it takes 70 grand divided by 120. Should be like 440 or something like that.
70 grand divided by
120
is 583.
Okay, my math doesn't work out, but yeah, so $583, right? So if I make 70 grand, my monthly payment should be no more than about $580.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
And just a rule of thumb. I mean, you guys can adjust that how you see fit.
Yeah.
But it's just a starting point,
yep.
right? So, like I said, be careful, because just because you make more money doesn't mean you should start inflating that number and be like, oh, you know what, instead of 10%, I'll make it 15.
Well, that's why I truly believe in a tops down approach, because you may make 70 grand. A single person making 70 grand is different than a parent making 70 grand, right? $583 on $70,000 for a single person is very different than $583 on a $70,000 parent.
But it's
right?
It's
very different. So that's why the tops down estimate, it's a starting point, but the tops down estimate will truly give you an answer as to what you're able to afford.
Yeah, gives you a better guideline, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so now we looked at kind of basic budgeting guidelines. Another thing to consider is insurance, because in North America and in Canada you need insurance.
Yep.
Because liability is a big problem.
I feel sorry for the young drivers, male drivers.
Oh yeah,
you guys got it bad.
We always get stereotyped, and insurance is always a whack number for us. But
shout out to PEO for giving great discounts.
And here's the thing is, we'll get into this. So maybe one of the driving factors is the type of vehicle you buy, like the insurance.
Yeah.
Your insurance rate. You actually might have some very unfavorable insurance because of where you live, your age, your driving record.
It's a 2-door car versus a 4-door car.
The type of car. Yeah, exactly. Is it a coupe? Is it a sedan?
Yeah, seriously.
There's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
It overall might not be huge, but when you add up all those factors, it makes a big difference. So, you living in a suburban or an urban downtown neighborhood or a very populated city, your insurance claims can be double of what someone who's living in the suburbs.
Or Timbuktu.
But it doesn't mean go move to Timbuktu just for your car. I did have a friend.
See? Okay.
I did have a friend who changed his mailing address to one of his relatives' house in Timbuktu.
Yeah.
Somewhere out in the boonies.
Yep.
And was able to drop his insurance by 60%.
I had a friend do that at a coworker who rented downtown, but he's from a city called Lucknow, which is...
Say what now?
Lucknow.
Say what?
Exactly. You don't even know where that is. But it's in Ontario. It's a little town of Lucknow. And that's where his family's from, his quote unquote home address. But, you know, he moved to Toronto, urban city, rented a condo, needed a car. It's a rental. It's like you rented a condo in Toronto, right? But car insurance is from Lucknow.
So these are just some tips that you can use, but we don't condone this, okay? Because this is technically insurance fraud.
Yeah.
So any insurance brokers or people in the law world,
sorry.
Yeah.
I will not name names.
No. But also in your insurance, when you're asking around, ask for association discounts or university alumni.
Yeah.
Right. So we are part of Professional Engineer Association, or PENG. So the PENG, from what we understand, is one of the best discounts available with all insurance companies. So a lot of insurance brokers are unable to beat that because we already get such favorable rates.
Do accountants get it as well?
There might be there. I know there's university alumni discounts, right?
Yeah.
So do
your research.
Make sure to check and ask.
Yeah.
And work with an insurance broker if you can. So, okay. This big topic of buying and leasing. Okay. So, buying and leasing can really also change the affordability of a car, right? Because typically, when I'm leasing terms can be lower, right? The monthly payments are lower and all this stuff. But buying, I obviously have to come up with a deposit and restructure a loan term and stuff like that. So we put together some pros and cons of leasing a car. Okay. Because I know there's a big debate about this.
Yep.
Where people argue all the time. So here's kind of what we believe. Okay. So pros, lower monthly payments. I think that's the clear one. Okay. You will be lower than buying a car. So, how this helps, it does free up cash flow,
monthly
right?
cash flow.
Cash flow is king. So really, if you are in a position where you kind of need extra cash for other expenses, leasing might be something to look at, right?
Yeah.
Because it also allows you to have some peace of mind because it gives you a newer vehicle. So leasing, you're always driving a newer vehicle, right?
Correct.
Because the terms are much shorter. You're usually only leasing a car for 2 to 3 years, max 5 years.
Yep.
And most of the times you don't end up buying the car, right? So, you'll always have the latest technology, the latest vehicle, the new car smell.
I love that smell.
I know. Shout out to the new car smell air freshener.
It doesn't smell the same though. It's still not the same as like an actual new car.
I know, but I really like that smell still. It's probably poisonous.
It probably is.
Yeah.
It probably is.
And another one is warranty coverage, like number 3, warranty coverage, right? Lease cars are always under warranty.
Yeah.
Because you're never past the warranty period of
4 years.
4 years usually.
And the new car, and it's covered. Everything's covered. So maintenance and stuff is...
You significantly reduce or have zero maintenance.
Zero. You just bring it into the shop.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong.
Like even BMW. BMW had oil changes covered for the first 4 years.
It's crazy.
I didn't have to change oil. It was amazing.
I know.
Nothing.
I can imagine.
Yeah. It was nice.
BMW oil changes ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, I know. And then and
then you start to pay.
And then I had to start paying because then warranty was up, and I was like, whoa, hold on a second.
I don't know about this.
How much now? And then number 4 is like you got limited depreciation risk because you're not holding on the car long enough for it to depreciate. So who cares, right? And really, if you're the person that really doesn't care, like really appreciates less hassle in life, you don't have to sell the car at the end. You just return it, drop it off the dealer, and be like, I'm done.
Give me a new one.
Yep. Right. So it's no hassles. And I think an important one here too, the last one I want to say about pros of leasing a car is tax write-offs.
I was say if you own a business.
Yeah. If you own a business, you can essentially write off your vehicle
as an expense.
Talk to your lawyer. Talk to your accountant before you decide to go and lease a car tomorrow, because you heard Jason and Jennifer talk about this on Your Everyday Rich. We are not liable for your lack of research. Okay. But that is something common in that world. So cons
of leasing.
Cons of leasing.
You don't own it. It's a forever payment.
Correct.
It's like
it's
forever payment. Like versus buying, at some point the payment stops once you pay the car off.
Yeah, we call it no ownership equity. Yeah. You have zero ownership equity in the game.
Yeah.
So I use the analogy of renting your home, right? So you're not building equity anywhere or or anything. So really, like Jen, you were saying, it's a revolving door of payments.
Yeah, never
all
ends.
the time. Never ends. And let me tell you something. We personally financed our vehicles, right? As Jen gave you the example.
Both of them.
All our cars so far. And when you stop paying, when you see on your statement, you're like last payment, and you pay off your car, it feels good. You know why? Good. Now I freed up X hundreds of dollars of cash flow.
Yeah. And
now I own the car, and essentially I don't have to worry about payments anymore other than maintenance. So it's a huge relief psychologically, but also financially. Yeah. Right now I can take that money and redeploy it into like more investing or, going to buy a Gucci bag. No. Yeah, you shouldn't.
Happen to living below your means.
Always living below your means. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. But yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? So like you have this money now that can be deployed to build your everyday rich, right? Stuff that's not going to depreciate.
Yeah.
A big, I think the top con of leasing is actually mileage restrictions. Now, when you lease, the dealership sets a certain amount of kilometers you can drive.
Yep.
And I remember we were driving with some of our friends before, and they're like, "Oh, we can't take our car on this trip because we're going to go over our mileage." I was like, "What?" Yeah. I didn't understand that concept back then.
Well, dealerships don't want people to run the car to the ground and then to the point where they cannot sell it after.
Exactly.
They take it back from you, right? So they got to protect the car at some point.
Yeah. And this goes back to the whole depreciation thing, right? So the dealers have already done the math.
Yep.
They know what mileage it needs to be at to be able to resell at
a certain value.
Exactly. A certain value that is above its depreciation book value.
Yep.
So, I guess the third one we could talk about is,
are we still in cons?
Yeah, still in cons. I mean, you're limited on your customization if you're into that game. So remember the whole thing of like
colors, interior.
No, whatever. Like customizing it after the fact, right?
Customizing.
You can lease any car. You can say, I want this option, that option.
Yeah.
But you can't customize it afterwards. So I can't drop rims. I can't put decals. I can't change out certain things.
Like you can't little lights and stuff, like soup it up like a
probably
Fast and Furious.
You could. I mean, hey, West Coast custom style, right? Like
can't do that?
Yeah. No, you're not supposed to. But I know people that did when they leased their car, and when every time they had to go to the dealership to get something checked, they had to take their rims off. You had to swap their rims off.
That's such a nuisance.
I know. So, but that is a con if you are if you do like to mod your car, right? So
I had blue lights. You had blue lights.
We all had blue lights. Everyone wanted to live fast and furious.
That's right. We all have blue lights.
Yeah, we couldn't live fast. Our slow ass cars.
Because you were driving your Mazda Protege with blue lights, and I was driving my Mazda Protege with blue lights. Shout out to Pacific Mall for the blue lights.
Yeah, man. Okay, and there's obviously more fees. So if the dealership will charge you more fees with excessive wear and tear and all this stuff. So if you return the car and you don't treat your car well, you don't wash it, you get it scratched, they're going to ding you. So it's just like renting a car. They go around and be like, hey, there's a dent here, scratch here, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to charge you more money.
Yep.
And then I think we'll bundle some last two is overall you're paying more money, right? Like we said, you're just paying more money because you're never buying into anything. So you're just always paying more money for a car. And if you really wanted to, and this is where I ultimately like about buying is flexibility. So the last con that I want to talk about is flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a lot of flexibility in a fixed contract of leasing. It's you can only drive this much. You can't. It's like a mortgage. It's like a fixed term mortgage.
Yeah, there's a penalty if you break it.
It's a penalty if you break it because you are owing interest to the car company, right?
Yep.
So, like, let's say you lose your job.
And you have to move or something.
Yeah, or you're gonna move and you can't take the car or whatever, right? Like, those are all these situations you can, who knows what happens. But just wanted to let you know, like, that is a real negative about leasing a car, and it happens. So, okay, so we talked about budgeting, the 24/10 rule, insurance, buying and leasing. We mentioned that we have financed our vehicles. We personally have financed our vehicles as our choice because of how the numbers worked and obviously how the payments work. But a big thing for us was looking at opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Because there is always an option of buying cash, right?
Yeah.
And if you were to buy a $30,000 car and pay cash, there's a true opportunity cost in a low interest rate environment that you actually could outperform the market if I took, let's say, $20,000 of that, right? And put it into the market or put it into an investment property or something, it would outpace that return. Like that
that's what I mean,
rate.
right? Like when we financed the car, we were being offered, 2% on our HELOC.
Yeah.
Right? So it's 2% to borrow money, right? To pay off the payment, right? Versus paying off cash. It's so little, like where I could take that money instead of paying $30,000 cash for the car, can take, you said $20,000, borrow the $30,000, pay it at 2%, and then take the actual cash that I had and invest it and make 5, make 7, make 8.
Yeah, we threw that
whatever.
Into the index funds.
Yeah.
And stuff like that in the stock market. And it was just no brainer for us. So, that's something that is a real deal. And let me give you that common argument is that if I took $20,000 now and I compounded that for 30 years, what would I have? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You can do that. Yep. Right. That is a real scenario. Mm-hmm. But realistically is you could just use that money for better investments. Mm-hmm. Right. It's something can return you better. Even if it was you taking 20 grand to go sign up for a course or get mentorship. Yep. Right. Or whatever it is, start a business. So the key thing is to look at your interest rate environment. So obviously now at higher interest rate environments, buying cash might not be a bad deal. But again, it's also up to what your goals are for your money.
Like, what do you plan on doing with if you decide to finance at the higher interest rate? What are you doing with the money that would have been put there if you weren't, or would have been used to pay the car? Now that you're, financing that portion, right? Yep. Like, what are you doing with that money? Yeah.
And I guess I like to end kind of with a few tips here. So, I've always bought used cars. So I have never bought a brand new off the lot car. Mm-hmm. Same with you. All your personal cars that you have purchased have all been used.
Because you have helped me.
That's right.
It's no lie. I'm not going to lie. So before we started dating, I've never purchased a car by myself. Like I said, all my cars were my parents' cars. Yep. And they've always bought new. Always.
Yeah. And here's the common thing that I heard from your parents and other friends and other parents is that they didn't want to buy a lemon. Yeah, they felt intimidated because they didn't know what to look for, right?
That's right.
There was this general fear of like, oh, you know what? I buying new is the best way to go because I know I'm going to get a great car. I'm not going to get something like bad.
Broken.
It's broken or,
someone's cheating me.
Exactly.
Like the seller is giving me something that doesn't work properly and they're not telling me about it.
And ultimately, I think it comes down to obviously your knowledge. So if you don't know anything about cars, I could understand why you would have that fear. Mm-hmm. And when I went to buy the Mazda, I actually got my good friend Neil to come with me, right? Because he knew everything about cars. And I essentially got him to ride around with me. And he's like, what do you think? He's like, clutch is shot, but overall it's okay. Like, right? But I'm like, okay, who cares? I could drive with a broken, like a shot clutch. And that was that, right? It was like, yeah. So obviously buying used, you can save a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like huge. And also like the thing is car dealers want to get cars off their lot. So a used car sitting there is no better than a brand new car for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Because just depreciating by the hour, by the day.
Exactly.
The longer it stays in the lot.
That's right.
The less they can sell it for.
That's right.
Right.
So you got a lot of buying, like
purchasing power
there. But interestingly enough, we were just Googling some stuff before we started recording, like during COVID, remember the whole used car market went up? It was crazy, right?
Because people couldn't buy new cars.
Yeah.
Because people
couldn't buy new cars.
Couldn't buy new cars.
No computer parts or anything like that. So
the entire market that typically, like you said, there's people who just are not comfortable buying used cars. Yep. So the entire market that is typically buying new cars now we're forced to buy used cars because there are no new cars available.
Yep.
So that all those people that are uncomfortable buying new cars are now buying used. I went to buy used during COVID.
And it was fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Hopefully it was fine.
I'm sure it was fine. Then another tip here is looking at overall total cost of ownership. A big thing is we're always looking at just the sticker price, right? 30K, 50K, 100K. Oh man, it costs a lot or whatever. Oh, I can afford that. But when you add all the math up in terms of repairs, maintenance, all these things, insurance, fuel, it adds up.
Fuel.
Now, here's the thing, right? Fuel. So if you want to go drive that Beamer, Benz, or Bentley, okay, be prepared to pay more money for gas, because now you ain't paying 87 regular gas. You're paying 89, 91, 93 octane gas. You're paying Supreme Plus.
Well, I can argue a little bit with that, but anyways, I'm not going to get into that.
We won't get into that.
I won't get into that in this episode.
We won't get into that. But you know what I'm saying, right? So like brakes are bigger, wheels are bigger, car parts for, I would say,
OEM.
The mid to OEM, the OEM replacement parts are much more expensive than driving, let's say, a Japanese or a domestic.
Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic.
Shout out to the Japanese cars for making cheap replacement parts. But that's a real thing, right? Just consider that in terms of your cost of ownership. So just because, your sticker price on the Beamer, used Beamer, might be cheaper than that Toyota Tundra or 4Runner or whatever the heck you want to look for, and I'll tell you right now, like that Beamer is going to cost more over the long run. And really, after you kind of looked at all these things, right? In terms of now you get an idea of how much car you can actually afford. Really, you need to ask yourself, okay, really, why do I need all this car? That's a question that you should be asking yourself first.
Yeah, and I think that answer is different for a lot of people. Right?
Yeah, but I want to blow some smoke here, right? Because there you can be in, I think, one of two camps. Is you could treat a car like it's just an A to B thing. Just get me where I need to get to. I don't care, right?
Just you care about reliability.
Reliability, and that's it.
Yep.
And you got the other camp where it's like, listen, this is a status thing. I want to portray, this certain status that I have of driving a luxury vehicle, right? When I drive around, people are like, oh, nice M3 there, or nice, C63 AMG, or a G-Wagon, Jennifer.
I like the G-Wagon.
I know you do. But, there's a lot of big psychological thing of driving around and trying to buy something we cannot afford.
Yeah.
Right? Like I said, the stats don't lie. There are many, many high percentages of people that they buy a $60,000 car on a $50,000 salary. And you go, what the... How? because they want to live a certain lifestyle that they can't afford.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just me blowing some smoke, right? There's obviously another camp where you can afford a vehicle, like you go through this exercise, or you don't need to because you just make a shitload of money.
Yep.
And you can afford the higher end vehicles. You can afford the luxury. You can afford the comfort. You can afford that performance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. And I think that is an awesome thing if you can do, because here's the thing, guys. Like I always will say, you know, me personally, I'm a car guy. Okay. I like driving cars, right? And well, now at the point where I feel like I'm an Uber driver for my family, now it just becomes a chore. But, you know, if you were to ask someone that has ever driven a BMW or Porsche, they will be like, yeah, I'm a car driver type of person. You know what I mean?
It's a driving experience.
Exactly. It's a driving experience. You had a coworker that had said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
The 5 Series. He had a 5 Series and he's like, I can never go back.
Yeah. And he has nice cars before. He's always been a quote unquote car person. He had a Mercedes Benz at some point. He's like, yeah, it was comfortable. But, you know, after he got into the Beamer, he's like, I can't, like the performance of it, it was just exceeded his other cars.
They call those cars uninspiring.
Yeah.
So, then obviously, like maybe if that's your motivational factor, right? Like you love driving cars, but put into perspective is that if you can't afford to drive performance, like don't ever put yourself in a hole where your lust for performance is now causing you a lot of grief for pain.
Yeah.
So, and just one last thing too, if you are looking in the luxury car market, the Canadian government a few years ago, they implement a luxury tax rule on vehicles and boats over $100,000. So
what's that tax? Yeah. I don't own any cars over $100,000. I have no idea what this is.
Me neither. But if you are looking for a vehicle over $100,000, be prepared to pay the luxury tax.
What is it?
So think of it like in a sports analogy. You go over you have a luxury tax. They're essentially penalizing you for buying something that's too expensive.
So it's more than your 13%. So you pay 13 HST and then a percent on top of that?
Hold on. So we'll explain this. So anything over $100,000 will be taxed the lesser of either 10% of the taxable amount of the vehicle, and 20% of the amount above the price threshold. So here's an example, okay? If you're purchasing a car with a taxable amount of $120,000, so the sticker price is 120 Gs, the luxury tax will be calculated of the lesser of 10% of 120. So 10% on 120 is $12,000. And the other or 20% of 20,000.
Which is 4,000.
4,000. Good. Your math is great. So whichever is less. So you're paying the 4,000. So you have to take $120,000 plus $4,000 luxury tax, and then now you got to pay HST on top of all of that.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Thank you, federal liberal government.
Why? Anyways, I don't get it. Anyways, man.
That's a 5 beer question
conversation. I don't understand.
Okay. So that's for Canada. Okay. So anyone listening in the States or outside of Canada, that's what we are subjected to pay for when you want to buy luxury. Call it the rich guy tax. But we hope that has been informative, because when we were going through our own personal journey and experience of purchasing cars, we went through something much more simplistic. But if we were to look at it again, you know, like how could we explain this to someone rather than just saying, oh, you know, base it off of something. Yeah. Right. We want to give you guys tangible guidelines so that if you are looking to buy a new vehicle or a new used vehicle or lease or finance, hopefully we give you some pointers on what to do. And go do your research now, right? Like go do your research, use this as a starting point. because ultimately we want to be able to empower you to make the best financial decisions for you so you can live your everyday rich. Right? So, but shout out to everyone that is working towards having to pay the luxury tax because, hey, listen.
No, thank you.
Don't mind me. I don't mind paying the luxury tax if I can afford it.
I guess I'm not buying the G-Wagon.
Yo, you can buy the G-Wagon. There's creative ways of getting below the luxury tax.
Oh.
And maybe we will invite someone that has purchased a luxury vehicle and got around that.
Interesting. I'd like to learn that.
Uh-huh. All right, guys. Help us pay the fee. Like, share, subscribe. Help us spread these living room conversations with other people, so we can help other millennials that look just like you and me to build their everyday rich, and hopefully they can also get their G-Wagon. Appreciate it, Jen. Anything else?
Nope. All good.
All right.
Signing off.
All right, everyone. Peace. Thank you.
See ya.
Peace, peace, peace.
Your Everyday Rich podcast is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. Any such information or other material should not be construed as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a qualified professional.